Nigeria's oil and gas industry is entering a high-growth phase ahead of 2026, driven by full implementation of the Petroleum Industry Act, PIA, deepwater project expansion, indigenous asset takeovers, and a nationwide gas transition. Major investments in deepwater developments, gas infrastructure, refining capacity, and decarbonization are reshaping the sector across upstream, midstream, and downstream segments. Indigenous firms are stepping into divested onshore assets, boosting demand for oil-field services, while the Decade of Gas initiative is accelerating CNG, LPG, and gas-to-power projects. With over $18 billion in approved field development plans and rising regulatory enforcement, 2026 is shaping up as a pivotal year for well-positioned investors and service providers. Daniel Duodu, ISO 901, Lead Auditor and Oil Strategy Compliance Analyst, joins me now to break this down. Thank you for joining us this morning, and Happy New Year to you. Yes, if you can unmute briefly. Yes, so we are seeing a lot of positioning within the oil and gas sector. And before we get into the topic at hand, I think we have to look at what is happening in the immediate. One is U.S. forces capture of Venezuelan president, Venezuela being one of the largest when it comes to oil reserves globally. How do you see this move shaping the oil and gas sector, especially for oil-dependent nations like Nigeria?
Okay, so the very first thing here, I agree with you being the key role in the oil and gas industry, but for now, that doesn't really have an effect Venezuela in Nigeria, because Nigeria is trying to shift away from the dependence of import of oil, trying to refine its own oil here with the help of local refineries and trying to see how to meet local demands. So that is not going to really have an effect in Nigeria.
Okay. Let's see what it does to the global oil prices. And still sticking with the larger context within the sector, we saw a lot of 11th hour deals in 2025 from the likes of Elumelu with Elumelu. We also, with Hares, I beg your pardon, and Seplat. Then we had Otedola with Gerugu, and I think Aradel also had a lot going on. What do all these shifts and 11-hour deals, what do they signal about the prospects within the oil and gas sector here in Nigeria?
Okay, this 11th hour deals actually, before now, we have the IOCs. The IOCs, one of the functions, they were actually responsible for both the onshore and offshore depending on when it has to do with production. But now, with what is going on in Nigeria now, so the onshore and the shallow waters, mostly Nigerian companies wants to be fully involved in the onshore and shallow waters, then push the IOCs to deep waters so that they can actually be more, because sometimes those wells that were not, their looks not good, most of them had little hydrocarbon, so it was not of any interest to the IOC. So now those wells, the hydrocarbons that were there, are of interest to Nigerian companies. So we are actually trying, the Nigerian companies are trying to buy over this and flow those wells, adding to the hydrocarbon reserve as a production in Nigeria. So those late hours deals are also to help increase the rate of production of hydrocarbon. That's all about it.
I mean, it's be interesting to see how all this pans out. And again, that local investor participation in our local assets, I think, is very key.
Yeah.
It's a good signal. Now, let's come to Nigeria's oil and gas sector. It's described as entering a high growth phase towards 2026. What would you say are the strongest indicators that this optimism is actually justified?
Okay, the very first of all, is massive infrastructure milestone. We used to have a problem with infrastructure before, but now with the AKK gas pipeline between Jakarta and Kaduna to try and see how we can actually centralize the gas, and then the NLNG Train 7, and then the refinery sovereignty. That means the Dangote refinery actually trying to combine with the Port Harcourt, rejuvenating the Port Harcourt refinery. All those ones are going to be actually for the infrastructure. Then also the upstream rebounds, trying to see how to get more people to buy into the vision, and then to see how they can actually invest more production, having a production target on ground. And the PIA is now coming to stand as the physical and the benchmark with the new tax act that is starting from 1st January, which is going to help in the competitive tax rate, the regulatory efficiency. All that is going to really help when it has to do with helping the massive infrastructure, trying to see how we can actually be optimistic about the oil and gas for 2026.
All right, so quite a lot of optimism there. And how would you say that full implementation of the PIA has changed investor confidence and also regulatory certainty in the sector? How is this influencing movement within the sector?
Okay, before now, what we had was DPR and NNPC. So we have the NNPC saving like a regulator, partly regulator, and also joining to be a body. So now what the PIA did is to separate both. Then it came out making NNPC a private company on its own, and also stating two different regulators, which is the NUPRC, which is responsible for the production of petroleum, and the NNDPRA. So that has actually streamlined, as in outlined each responsibility, and has actually boosted confidence. Before now, if you check what happened before now, you find out that NNPC was actually a regulator partly, and okay, but now everything has been streamlined. Under regulation, you find there's a clear NUPRC and NNDPR for taxation. There's a clear definition for licensing. You find out that there's no licensing at this, maybe because based on political. No, it's transparent now. There's a digital outframe for everybody who wants to go through. The PI has made it clear. This is the forms to use, and then you fill this, and then you go table your bid. These are the requirements. Those are the things. And then also before now, you always have the military approach to security, but now you have the community bring the community is part of the stakeholders to ensure that the safety of everyone and the project is actually done safely. So the PIA actually given them stability, because if you're investing now in the upstream sector, you already know exactly what the PIA says, which is the benchmark. You know that these are the rules. You already know exactly what is going on, unlike before, which you don't know what is happening in the sector.
All right, so there's a lot more transparency, and I would say some level of certainty. You know what to expect as an investor. As you have pointed out before, with IOCs, we're shifting them deepwater. Indigenous firms are taking over onshore assets. So from what you have seen, would you say that indigenous firms are ready to optimize the onshore assets? We're talking financially, we're talking the technical know-hows. Do we have that on lock within the sector from the indigenous firms? You appear to be muted. Oh, okay. We can't hear you at the moment. I'm not quite sure why, but hopefully we are able to get your audio sorted. Are you there, Daniel?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, great. So let's get into it. The IOCs, are they prepared financially, technically to handle and optimize onshore assets?
Yeah, well, first of all, when you're getting to do anything, it sometimes is not always 100% perfect. There is, for a child who wants to walk, he will not just stand up and walk. No, there will be challenges in the front, but if you actually focus on it, you'll find out that you grow over time to become better. Now, if you want to talk about technical expertise, you find out that there is a whole lot of technical expertise when it has to do with some of them we experience. If you check, I don't want to call some names. They are very experienced in the oil and gas industry. They have actually handled some high portfolios, including across. They have even come to Nigeria to be experts overseeing the activities of Nigeria. So we have a whole lot of people who are actually grounded when it has to do with the technical expertise. Then unlike the foreign people, okay, now let's look at the costs. The cost implication for bringing a foreigner down to Nigeria, the cost is higher than using an indigenous person that is from the community. So the cost has actually gone down. But the only problem is actually the financial aspect of it, which you're going to take a loan, which for the foreign companies, they are going to take a loan at a lower interest rate compared when you're actually taking a loan, and some of the transactions or the takeover that we've done we're funded by a loan. So let's take, for instance, I didn't want to mention names like a Wando's takeover. If a loan was actually used to fund the purchase, how would you raise money to start doing the drilling itself? So it's going to take a whole lot of funds to begin, because while you're trying to service the loan, you need to drill to be able to put back to make sure that you flow the wells for it to be profitable. So those are the things, the financial hiccups here and there are still there, but if you give it time, over a period of time, I think it will balance up.
Okay, I guess again, time will tell, and hopefully we see that smooth transitions from the IOCs to the locally owned oil companies in terms of technical know-how. Now, the decade of gas started in 2021. It's 2021 to 2030. The expectation was to turn Nigeria into a gas-powered economy by 2030 and shift away from the reliance on crude oil. Can Nigeria realistically deliver on that? We have, 4 years to go? What milestones as well should investors watch out for? Are we in the right direction at the moment?
Okay, for that, I think we're in the right direction. Just like I said, some few, because with the AKK pipeline activated Q1 to Q2 2006, and then that's trying to see how we can do a nationwide distribution of gas, and then the OB3 pipeline fully commissioned, and then that's the OB3 full commission pipeline, and then we also have the 2026 gas focused licensing round, and then the 27 that is actually progressing right now, and then the financial final investment decisions on FLNG. All those ones put in place are actually infrastructures that are actually listed down to be able to ensure that the decade of gas is actually delivered. Okay, then also the incentives kept for gas wells. Those incentives actually are going to help to unlock the gas industry and power, the key enablers in domestic gas distribution and CNG adoption. Now, there's a whole lot of push. Now, if you check very well the cost of CNG and compare it to the cost of petrol over a period of time, you're going to find out that those people doing tricycle and cars moving around or doing transportation with CNG is actually is cheaper, and you make more profits than going to petrol. And petrol is more expensive. You're going to find petrol for 950 to 1,000 or more when it has to do with pump to going to a filling station, unlike CNG that is actually cheaper and can actually do almost the same trips. So with this information, send out data to all the commercial car users like tricycles and all the the downflow drivers. So if this information is pushed down to them very well, you're going to find out that they will actually shift mode to CNG engines, and then this will help to lower the dependence on petrol.
I mean, we'll have to wait and see how that pans out as well. And still staying with gas, the gas flare commercialization, we know for long the flaring has been seen as some sort of liability, and they're looking to transform that into valuable economic asset. Looking at what's happening now, and it's a 2025 project, do you see it translating into commercially viable LPG, CNG, and, you know, a power solution, or are regulatory and pricing risks still too high?
Yeah, that's where the whole idea is. That's what they're trying to do. So rather than flaring gas, there are laws now that you shouldn't flare gas. And then for those of them coming on board, those who had won the licensing round, there are some agreements they need to sign not to flare gas. You know, so there are laws in place, and then there are also infrastructure kept in place to ensure that the flaring is actually stopped, and then is being channeled to different things so that it can be used either as cooking gas or maybe channeled to different aspects of the economy. So that is actually the reason why we have this infrastructure. But that's the reason for some of the infrastructure that I just mentioned. And then those things are there to help us stop the flaring of the gas, not just flaring the gas, and then also turning it to be able to be useful to the economy.
Let's see. Hopefully, we're able to achieve just that. Let's focus for a moment on CNG. We know there was a lot of hype, especially post-subsidy removal, especially when it comes to transportation and all of that. And there was that effort from the government to push adoption. But is Nigeria's push towards CNG power transport, is it fast enough to materially reduce fuel costs and petrol dependence? What are some of the bottlenecks?
The very first thing for sure, everything that comes new is always, there's always a pushback on anything new when it has to do with anyone. Change is always hard to, for example, maybe you were using the petrol engine, you're now told to change to a CNG. Yes, there's always that pushback. But if we keep throwing the advantage, you know, one, it will actually help, especially because if you want, let's do an analysis. If you compare the price between CNG and petrol, availability, we need to think about the availability. Is this available to people in the north? Is this available to people in the south? That's why those infrastructures are kept there, so that we can centralize this gas to everybody. So if it's available, okay, let's check the south. Is it available to the south? Moderately available to the south. To the north, is it available? No, that's where the AKK pipeline is actually in progress. Now, the conversion, now the demand, can we really meet the demand if peradventure everybody depends on gas? Can we meet that now? No, because if you want to check, the people in the north don't even have access to it for now until the AKK pipeline is actually fully completed, and then they actually have access to this gas. So more things has to be done. More infrastructures are still supposed to be built to make the availability, because without it being available, it's like you telling me to convert and driving a solar car, you don't have any way you can charge the car. Then what's the essence? Why are you driving a solar car or a solar car when you don't even have where you're going to charge your engine? So that's where the issues are. So if you're driving a CNG car, you should have filling stations in every part of the country, so that if you're traveling to Kano by road, you know that you're very certain that if you pass like 3 filling stations, you should have one that is actually CNG, that you can actually fill your tank and then move forward. That is where the problem is. The availability is where the problem is. So if that can be done, and then it's available all around everywhere in the country, then I think a whole lot of people will be depending on it. That's what we need to have to now start driving the HSC side of it, making sure that this and you understand why distinct safety measures should be kept in place to ensure that the safety, because once you have an issue with one, and then the safety, then bad news goes viral like boom. So once it's not safe, everybody's tend to draw back. So gradually, you can actually roll the public news in transportations and then infrastructure's expansion, critical for material fuel savings. Yes, policy incentive needed for accelerating adoption. There is a lot of incentive by the current administration to encourage those incentives. If you want to get this, you want to get this. If you do gas, these are the incentives to get. All those ones are actually kept in place to ensure that that the daycare of gas is actually actualized.
All right, we'll see how that goes. And as for distribution, we had Ojulari come out to say that the 2.8 billion AKK pipeline will be activated this year. So let's see how all of that pans out. And if electric doesn't also take attention away from gas in terms of transportation. But let's come to Dangote Refinery. It's online, it's boosting capacity. Do you see Port Harcourt Refinery being fully operational this year? Is that something we should keep in our projection? And how do you see that reshaping Nigeria's downstream market?
Yeah, if it works, let me be very optimistic first. If it actually works, it's going to be a very good it's going to be a very good one. And the person handling it, Dangote, who is actually driven, who is actually business driven, is actually able to make sure it works. But the problem is that it's going to help increase the availability of fuel, especially around the Port Harcourt and the side of town, the side of the state. And then with what the capacity of the Port Harcourt refinery is going to also help reduce importation of fuel to Nigeria. Is going to help going to reduce that dependency of foreign refineries, and then it's going to be a boost. But is it possible for it to be done this year? Because it has to do in phases. First of all, then they have to finish revamping, and then they check these other phases. Depending on how quick the whole repays for each of the phases is, but I'm not certain that can be done this year.
Okay, I mean, a lot of ifs and, a lot of conditions there, but we'll see what happens. But from what you're saying, it's not likely. Thank you so much for your perspective and your insight on the conversation, the sector, the oil and gas sector, projections for the year 2026. Daniel Duodu, ISO Lead Auditor and Oil Strategy Compliance Analyst. A pleasure having you in.